Welcome to Turek Books Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Joshua Turek. We're never going to read all the books we want, but when someone tells us about a book, that's its own valid form of experiencing it. Our guests come in to talk about the books that left lasting marks on them as readers, and that becomes a springboard to who they are, who I am, and maybe who all of us are. So sit back, relax, and enjoy it. And who knows, maybe you'll end up grabbing a book or two. Maybe you've read some of them, and it's nice to hear someone else talk about them. We want this to be like a book club, but without the guilt. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Turek Books. If you're enjoying the podcast, please remember to rate us on your preferred app that you're listening on. Maybe you're on YouTube, give a thumbs up. These things help. They help add credibility to the podcast so that maybe we could bring in like a George Saunders or a Chris Hedges. Do you know who those people are? No, but they mean something to me. Anyway, speaking of someone who means something to me.
Anyway, till then, you got Cory, you know. One day when we get enough YouTube subscribers, we're going to get some guests. But, man, today...
today I'm relying on love.
Ooh, nice recovery.
Is that okay?
I love that.
Love defies rating.
Yeah.
It does not adhere to numbers.
Yeah.
And that's why you're here, because the love is shared.
True.
Okay. Are you willing to admit you love me?
I am.
Okay, well, yeah, I love you
I've loved you for a long time.
Okay, thank you. Well, we saved that. Let me tell you about our guest today before we get even further into our tangled web. He's a comedian, a filmmaker, part of the Dress Up Gang who just finished shooting their first movie. Check out all their sketches on YouTube, Instagram. You might also know him as Molly Bro, who had a viral crowdfund campaign at the last Burning Man, really sort of saved the day there, and we're so happy that he's here with us. Cory Loykasek.
Thank you very much.
One of my dear friends, too.
Yeah.
You got me twisted.
Yeah.
How are you?
Good. It's fun to be here. I feel like we always talk about these things on our own time on the beach on Sundays, and now here we are.
Yeah, truly one of my favorite people to talk to. I'm guessing that's not going to translate at all during the podcast, but we'll give it a try.
Yeah. Yeah, we really set ourselves up to fail. Hey, we have fun on our own, and let's just see what happens in front of other people.
Let's give it a go. I'm starting to realize that I'm like scheduling my social life into this podcast, which is nice, but it's also like, dude, you got to focus. You got to nourish your relationships outside of this.
I think this is good. It's like doing projects together. Like I got buddies at home that they hang out by changing each other's oil on the weekends.
Right.
Productive, doing something.
Okay.
I've been thinking I need to do that more with my friends. Get together for a project instead of just sitting having beers.
A creative excuse.
Something, yeah.
Something to look at together.
Something you're building or doing together.
Yeah.
Or helping each other out with things in their own life.
That's
It's also easier to work into your life if you do that instead of every hangout having to be a full time out from your life.
And when you say doing that with your friends, you talking like making sketches, or are you talking about changing the oil?
I think, if I had to move tomorrow and I'm like, shoot, I can't hang out because I have to move. And you're like, well, I can come help for 2 hours. Now we're hanging.
Yeah.
And doing something.
I could drive you halfway across the country. Yeah. And then I'll catch a flight somewhere in Oklahoma.
Something like that.
Well, you're one of the most social people I know. I think you're someone who brings people together. You've had some really famous beer pong tournaments with no beer in the cups.
Water in the cups.
Because as you say, beer pong is a sport.
Yeah, it's a sport, not a drinking game.
Yeah.
That's what I tell myself as I get older, but I also believe it.
Yeah.
Also, it's more inclusive that way. More people can play.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't drink anymore. So, but yeah, those are such nice social gatherings.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're one of the few people I know who does that. I feel like you have a more optimistic view on life in general than me.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, and I'm attracted to that.
Yeah, I think a lot of our conversations tend to be similar things we mull over, but maybe I lean a little more optimistic or naive or something.
No, it's just a different viewpoint, and it's one that I always walk away being happy about. But we haven't really been talking about your reading life much these days.
No, and that's actually a good segue into what, as I was thinking about coming on, just been thinking about books I've read, just realizing like I just don't read.
No?
Well, not lately, and I think I have a little bit, but overall I feel like a struggle I've had lately is like between really trying to get work stuff dialed in. Honestly, just being single and wishing I would love to start a family or something. I just turned 40. It's hard for me to sit at home on a Tuesday night and read a book and be like, this is where I should be.
Right.
I should be right here on my couch by myself doing this.
You're like, I should be out there finding a mate.
And
then I can read.
Yeah, exactly. Not that that's what I end up doing, but I get stuck in this paralysis of like, it doesn't always feel great to just, plus I'm just a ADD type of brain anyway. It's hard for me to focus on books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any workarounds for that you've found in the past? Like, does the type of book matter? Do you do audiobooks?
Yeah. I think when I just look at books I have read in the past 5 years, it's like, I just, for instance, read Shawshank Redemption this week.
Okay.
I watched the movie last week, and I was just like, wait, that book's 100 pages? I bet I'd love to read it. I'm curious how they adapted it. And I kind of mowed through that. Yeah. But it's like life, death, prison, high stakes. Like, I'm just invested. It's easy for me to follow and not get too sidetracked in my mind. Last book I read like that, I read No Country for Old Men. Same. Blazed through it. Had a blast. It's just like this. I think I need stakes, and I love short to the point writing. Like your poetry, actually. I like pithy, short sentences. Yeah. And like easy to absorb stuff. So when novels can do that, then I'm all in. Yeah. But when it's something's more like a friend of mine was reading the Stephen King book where I forget, it's the date, it's the JFK. The name of the book is like 1965, whatever that book is. Anyway, he goes, dude, you got to read this book. Goes inside the bookstore, gets it for me. I get home, first 2 pages are about how the sunlight through the windows is hitting the gym floor. And I'm like, dude, let's go. I can't read about, I don't like colorful language like that. Yeah. Yeah, you don't need them to set the scene. You want to get right into the emotional stakes. Kind of, the physical stakes. Yeah. You want to see a man having a hard time. Yeah, I think I need that. Otherwise, I just get sidetracked. Before we recorded an episode a couple weeks ago, I was at the park across the street from here, and a kid with a skateboard asked me if I had any water, and I had just drank some of my water that I had bought an hour before. And, I was thinking about COVID. I also knew that there were drinking fountains, or I thought there were. So That's a weird question. Yeah, he's like, I'm just really hot, man. And he walked away, and I was like, oh, sorry, I think there's drinking fountains right across the street. But it felt like no country for old men. Like, that's how the guy gets in trouble, right? Yeah. He goes back to give that dying man a sip of water. Yeah. And I was kind of haunted by not giving this kid water, but I don't know what the solution was. Give him my water, and then, what if I had COVID? What if, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Would he have shared my water I'd pour it in his mouth? Yeah, waterfall. Yeah. I mean, he's probably on mushrooms or something. That's the only time I would get super hot and ask somebody for water. I don't know. It was the vibe. Now he'll be fine. Actually, you're 100% correct. Whenever I don't get something, I'm like, mushrooms. It's got to be. Or at least whenever I've tripped other people out, it's because I'm kind of on one. Okay, that lands with me because we were across the street from a library where he could have gotten water. He was like 15, you know how to get water at that age. Yeah. Mushrooms. Or he's messing with you. Now you don't know if people have another camera and this is a TikTok prank. That's right. Every time like a teenager talks to me nowadays, I'm like, is there a camera hidden or something? Yeah. I did a good deed for someone out in public, and I was disappointed that a camera wasn't hidden. What'd you do? I gave someone some money outside of a grocery store who needed it, and it felt like, hey, maybe this is like a hidden camera moment right here. Yeah, and then public enough place. Yeah, public enough place. It sort of just felt like the right scenario, but then no camera. Yeah, I was in a liquor store the other day, and this teenager was like, with a friend. He goes, "Hey, I'm gonna do this. Hey, you feel me? Hey, what do you say? Like, sir? Hey, sir, can you dap me up?" And I was like, "What? Are you messing with me?" Or I kept looking around for a camera, and then it made me ruder than I wanted to be. Yeah. How did the sir feel? The what? Him calling you sir. Yeah, weird. Yeah, it hurts, sure. Right? It does, yeah. It's like, I'm bro. Yeah, though Cam's 25, and he said when he skates, teenagers call him Unc. So it's like, when you're young, you can really perceive stages of age a certain way. Yeah. Because in my mind, I'm like, I don't look that different. But at that age, when I was like 19, someone 24, I'm like, dude, get out of here. What are you doing here?
Yeah, it's like, you're a man.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm something else.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. You started by saying you don't read, but then you read Shawshank Redemption this week.
Yeah. So then I'm like,
are you being hard on yourself?
No. And also I was trying to think, like, people always it's like exercise, like, oh, I don't read enough. But it's like, well, yeah, why is that? I'm not mad at myself for it.
No, it doesn't seem like it.
I think one thing too is working with fiction and writing a lot. I find I don't often want to read fiction.
Yeah.
Like if I'm mulling over fake stuff all day and then I go home, I tend to read more nonfiction.
Yeah.
Like, like Sapiens. I read that last year. Blazed through it, loved it. Every page was blowing my mind with some new fact or new thing I hadn't thought about. And then it's like I find when I go through what I've read, even going through my Kindle, it is usually a reaction to something for me that's going on.
Yeah.
Like when I was going through like dating this girl and we were kind of trying to figure out what we were doing and had some relationship issues, I read every relationship book I could find, but I wouldn't touch one now because I'm not in that situation.
Yeah, it's cold.
Yeah, it just doesn't do anything for me right now.
Did it do something for you in that moment?
Some of the books I liked, some things really resonated. It definitely just feels good to have other people. Being in a relationship is such a closed experience, just the two of you, that just having anything sort of validate some feeling you've had just feels good because you can feel like you're going crazy. That's
so true.
Yeah.
And like some thought that like you just want to work through, if you were to say it in passing to your friend, then they'll bring it up like 2 years later, like as though it's something more significant, or it kind of sticks to you and you're like, dang, I probably shouldn't have even let that one out.
Yeah, right. Wait, what do you mean by that?
Like I don't know, things in relationships, you could have these like fleeting impulses or these passing thoughts or this thing you're irritated by or this insecurity that you have, and you might share it with a friend just thinking, yeah, I just want like some outside perspective. But then like they'll keep it on you.
Yeah, totally.
Where it's like, I don't know if my wife likes that I wear my hat all the time, and then you're like 2 years later, you're like, yeah, you still having issues with the hat?
Yeah.
And it's like,
and especially in relationships, those things can keep coming up. You know what? Actually, the book that really I found helpful at the time was I read all these different relationship books. I had this therapist at the time that I loved who was kind of, was kind of more of a spiritual type therapist. He's on to some kind of less like what happened in your childhood and more just like if the goal is to be present and loving this week, what's made it hard for you or what's pulling you out of that headspace, and kind of just reframing things to get back there. So I found I had this really peaceful way of viewing the relationship, but it was almost like naive or something, or I would be like, well, if we both communicate like this and this, and sometimes I'd be like, damn, it does feel like some guy-girl shit is getting in the way here that I didn't know how to address. And then I read this book called The Way of the Superior Man. Did you ever read that?
No.
At the title, I think it means just like how to be your best self. It's not a great title.
Yeah, you could take that one a few ways.
Yeah, it's the kind of book that you kind of fold the cover back when you read it in public. I've straight up ripped the covers off many books, just like I don't want anyone asking me about this book. But what was fun is it'd be like, in a kind of neutral way, like, not men or women, but sort of masculine identifying people tend to be like, view things this way and over here. So I started reading it with her, and then I would just show her a chapter and be like, does that check out for you? And she'd be like, yeah. And I'd be like, no way. Interesting. Okay. So I use it as like a reference. Like,
yeah.
I remember there's one chapter where it was like, for a guy, for like the masculine, your words are your truth. And for the feminine, your words express how you feel in this moment.
Uh-huh.
And so for me, I'd be like, dude, 3 months ago, remember in the car, I told you that one sentence? That's my truth. How come you keep questioning it? And for her, she's like, oh, I thought you just like said that. And I'm like, no, for me, that like meant something.
Yeah.
But then going through the book and pointing to chapters, it was fun. Or she'd be like, no, that doesn't check out. And I go, okay, cool.
Yeah.
It was a good like reference tool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like just trying to like have some familiar basis to work off of.
Yeah.
And especially like you said, relationships get insular, but they also sort of get like whirlwindy and confused, and you merge parts of yourselves, and it's difficult to sort of get the bird's eye view on it.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Yeah, but that's also what makes it so cool.
Yeah, and just having any reference tool like that is fun. I mean, I think communication and finding those common grounds is so fun. So sometimes books can allow you to have that. In fact, my brother-in-law, one time he said this kind of offhanded. He got really into books about the history of LA and movies here, like 50s and stuff. And he already has an interest in that, but I noticed he really read them. And later he was like, well, I started reading those once you moved there. Because I figured just when you read the same books as people, it gives you a shared common knowledge. And I was like, oh, dude, I didn't even know that was a gesture so he can learn about where I live and how I live.
That's so sweet.
Really sweet, right?
Yeah.
He just said it casually over Christmas. And I'm like, oh, dude.
Just this last Christmas? Yeah. Wow. Just to be informed on where you're going.
But it's true. If you both read the same book, you have that same shared kind of experience, which is really powerful.
Yeah, and LA history books, I mean, modern LA is only like 130, 40 years old. So it's like, man, the amount of life that's been packed into that period of time is pretty fascinating.
Oh, yeah. LA's fascinating like that.
Yeah.
I haven't read those books.
Yeah, exactly. You're like,
but I have some sense of something. I've seen.
Thank you for reading about LA. Now, can you tell me about it?
Yeah, I think I've overheard you and Cam talk about something.
I know Los Feliz, and I know, it's like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. We've done some LA history on this.
I got some questions for you.
Okay.
I got one. Do you underline when you read?
I do not.
Okay.
What I have started doing lately is I'll bookmark, or I'll take photos with my phone.
Yeah.
I run my book page, so I'll take photos and almost instantly post them if a line really strikes me. Or I'll put bookmarks in along the way, and I'll come back to the bookmarks. But I'm not a draw on the page person. I don't.
Because you want to keep it pristine, or just because you don't think it'll.
Yeah, I don't want to alter the book.
Right.
Other people are totally different, and that's fine. But some people say they love getting a used book that's already been altered, so that they can like see who found what interesting. I'm not that way.
Yeah.
I don't even like dog-earing the pages.
That would bother me more.
Really?
Well, it just seems like it would screw up the flow of reading.
Yeah.
The underlining, I just noticed I'm not good at it. Like, I don't, mainly with like when you had to study in school, I'd look back and be like, why did I underline these sentences? It's almost like something that was interesting to me and I spaced out and then just underlined the next thing.
Yeah.
Or like on the way here, I don't have that many books. I think I gave away a lot of books, but I have some old Nietzsche book and I was like just thumbing through it. And I've got all this stuff underlined and I'm looking at it. I'm like, why did I underline that? That's not even like the main part of the paragraph that it was in. There's an art to it.
Well, it's like you were saying, your mind drifts off. And with my reading experience, I've started to realize that it's okay if your mind drifts off. That book allowed it to do that. That book led you down a pathway and you just kept walking. And then you like turn the page of the book and you're like, okay, I know I didn't fully read that, but I'm okay with where it took me.
Yeah. Maybe the underlining just feels performative for me.
Right.
It's like, oh, I should probably underline something right there. It's like, why that? And the Kindle is funny because it shows you what other people underline or highlight. And I'm always like, when I highlight something that is like a mostly highlighted thing, I'm like, yes.
I did it. I
like seem to have picked out what was important.
What other people did. Yeah. Well, it's participatory.
Yeah. And I'm just, especially with nonfiction, I want to just make sure I'm getting it.
Yeah.
But with something like with No Country, I was just highlighting just sentences that were just like great quotes. Yeah. And the cool thing about the Kindle, I do love that I can go back through and like have them all accessible whenever I want.
That's pretty cool.
Because otherwise I will forget them.
Yeah. But even just the act of doing it, you're like stamping a moment in time.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to go back to it.
It doesn't mean it, but it would be, a friend of mine reads a lot, but he also will take the time to memorize passages he likes. And I'm like, that is just a cool, to be able to have these things at your fingertips to reference or just to think for yourself, or that feels like I would like to have that.
Does he drop the quotes sometimes?
Yeah. In a really...
at the right time?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Power move.
Never showing off, just appreciation.
Cool and calm.
Yeah.
He doesn't like blush when he does it?
No.
Only times I've quoted things in the past, I got like uncomfortable halfway through. And now I don't think I remember any of it.
Maybe if it's like Old English.
Yeah.
Like Shakespeare or something.
Wait, I do have one, Ernest Hemingway. By then I knew everything good and bad left an emptiness when it stopped. If it was bad, the emptiness filled up by itself. But if it was good, you could only fill it by finding something better. Does that mean anything to you?
I'd have to ask you to do it again to really have a hot take.
Yeah, I'm just surprised.
Why did it stick out to you?
I think I was going through a breakup.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, just like kind of, those questions that keep lingering in the head.
Yeah.
But I was also probably like 25, but the fact that I still remember it, yeah.
Yeah, there's a book called, sometimes it's interesting when it's like just a visual. There's a book. Did you ever read Soldier of the Great War by Mark Halperin?
No.
That's an epic book.
Yeah.
Great. That's one of my favorites. But he describes this guy falling out of a boat, and it's something like, as he looked up, he saw he saw his hands like claw through the sky and all of this light pour out, blah, blah, blah. But it was only his hands. It was only his hands in the air, and those were only the stars. Or something about like, if you fall and look at the stars, it looks like you're clawing the sky. The way he painted that picture, I just find myself like thinking of it a lot. Yeah.
And then it's what came up now.
Yeah.
So it's still living there.
Yeah.
Seared into your brain pretty good.
And that's what's funny, like, because I did read Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah. And
that's really descriptive in some difficult prose, but for some reason I was into it.
Yeah.
But I think it's because it's a story about death, and it's very visceral.
Yeah.
To me. He's the author I've read the most, for sure.
Cormac?
Yeah.
What about him has made him so prolific in your reading?
I don't know, because each one's been a one-off. It's not like I'm obsessed with him and then I just have to read the next book. It's like Everybody Read the Road. I read that. All the Pretty Horses was recommended to me a long time ago. I loved that book. I think he's a great writer, and I think it is that kind of pithy, I think of it like a good country song, like where there's just like a wisdom but a plainness to the prose or something.
Yeah, and kind of the cold hard savagery of man.
Yeah, that too.
I feel like you also recommended the movie Dunkirk to me.
Oh yeah.
Which I loved.
Yeah.
And like I feel like that lives in that canon too.
Totally.
Of like men in war or men in violent scenarios. And the sort of simplicity of it.
I think I do love a what would I do type of thing.
Right.
Like, fuck, what would I do if I was in that situation? It really keeps me engaged.
Yeah.
And
like in No Country for Old Men, would you have gone back and given that guy water?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. But it's one of those where it's easy to say, you kind of don't know.
Yeah.
It's a great what if moment.
Yeah. I read Blood Meridian, and I honestly, I don't remember too much of it.
Yeah.
I do remember, I always say, I've said it multiple times on here, like the language is so grandiose and the words are so big and evocative. But yeah, I don't know. I think maybe I got to do another visit to Cormac because I might be missing something, or maybe he's not.
Have you never gotten into any of his books?
No, just the movies actually based off the books.
Well, that book is like, it's interesting the range of his writing. Like The Road, you can read in an afternoon.
Yeah.
It's like very simple prose. Then everything else is kind of in the middle, and then Blood Meridian is like a whole different type of writing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, none of the other books are written like that.
Oh, really?
Well, not the ones I've read, yeah.
Okay.
I think No Country for Old Men, it's like different enough from the book. The language is so rich and just fun, and like every other paragraph you're like, oof, damn, that's a good line.
Yeah, and what did you pull from that book? Like, do you have a big takeaway from it? Like the metaphor of it all, or the symbolism of it, or?
I mean, I took probably from it, I think just the basic evil is going to come. It's like there's nothing. I like that the movie stops being about stopping it and just like, what do you do when that is there?
Yeah.
And that speech, like in the movie that he gives at the end about like his father carrying the torch into the dark. It's like, that's kind of all you can do.
Mm. And is that in the book too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that idea for sure.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly I think they lean more into actually that Tommy Lee's character. And I don't remember feeling like it was drastically different. I just thought the lines were so good. The dialogue was really pithy.
Yeah.
His last book, The Passenger, I think it was called, easily the most depressing. It's like, I'd be curious if anyone thoroughly enjoyed that experience.
Yeah, I don't have the same kind of threshold. Actually, I can handle a darker book than I can movie. I don't watch horror films. That doesn't appeal to me. But yeah, I could get pretty dark into a book. I've read, like, Dennis Johnson has a war book. can't remember. It's called Tree of Smoke, Vietnam. Pretty nasty. I just read Parable of the Sower, which is a sci-fi dystopian movie. But to your point,
everyone's telling me to read that.
Yeah, are they?
Yeah.
Well, it just had its moment too because the opening chapters took place in July of 2024.
Yeah, that's why. Okay.
Yeah. Which is when I happened to start it.
I already missed my window then.
Yeah, dude, the apocalypse is happening without you.
Yeah.
You'll get the next one.
Just to pivot, I was thinking, it is like, I'm like, what do you take away from books? I get frustrated when I look back and I don't remember, but a lot of times I do have like a feeling about it.
Yeah.
It's like either an image or a little, I don't know, almost like a dream or something.
Yeah, what I've come to understand about reading a book is not memorizing lines or themes or even the question I asked you about metaphors. It's really just trusting that it integrated into you.
And at least for that period of time, like I love, whenever I'm reading a book, I do start seeing the world through the lens of, it's like a psychedelic trip. You're letting someone into your mind. And I really end up kind of adopting to that worldview for a little bit. Or like even in Shawshank, I'm walking around sort of hearing the world through Morgan Freeman's narration as I'm like reading this book.
Yes.
Or you read Tom Robbins?
Yeah.
Jitterbug Perfume is the only one I read. But that was a book where I was like, his language is wild. It was like juicy or something.
Yeah.
It made the world feel like not like a boring descriptor, but like come to life.
Yeah.
I remember he described this woman like a large woman with big hips or something walking down the street, and described it like a gypsy wagon with banjos on the inside banging down a cobblestone road or something. And I remember just being like, dang, that's a trippy way to think of it. And every paragraph would have another kind of visual like that. Yeah. That kind of blew me away.
Yeah, he's a really kind of wily writer.
Yeah, that's right.
There's something feral to him. Yeah. That's like makes it fun. It took me a second to get into him, and then when I did, I was like, oh yeah, I like this guy.
That's the only book I've read of his. Is there one that's like the quintessential?
I feel like he's like the writer who would most like hit on your girlfriend.
Oh, that's funny.
If you went to the bathroom or something.
It did feel like he was showing off
a little bit, right? Like he's that cool cowboy. It's like sometimes at the end of the language bar.
I'm like, that was sick, but you didn't need to do that right there. It's not that essential to the story.
Yeah,
I did have the feeling. I'm like, this guy's kind of, it's like Steph Curry hitting another three at the end. It's
like
a little
facing the bench before it even lands. through the net.
A little bit like that.
Yeah, kind of a rodeo cowboy with the lasso doing all the tricks for you. And it's like, well, just get the bull.
Yeah, Yeah, I think I was thinking last night that in college, I didn't read at all. And then I remember Bukowski what got me back in. But it was kind of that same, like, it's just simple lines. It's about sex, drinking. But he has, like, I liked his takes on stuff. And I kind of was like, oh, I didn't know you could write like that.
Yeah,
and get away with it.
Sort of primary notions, food, drinking, sex, trying to make a buck, like pretty much as simple as that.
Yeah, but then having enough of a cool take on it that I found myself his Ham on Rye, his I was gonna share I was like, oh, I should buy Women. I haven't read that since I was in college, and I'd be curious. The cover is so bad on the one. It makes it all salacious, like you'd be embarrassed to read it in public.
Yeah, it has yellow on it.
It's like blue with it looks like a series. Each book was like blue.
Oh, okay.
Had this corny Bukowski emblem on it. The one I read back in the day was just like brown with the word women on it, and that was it.
Oh, cool.
And so you felt like
I know that one.
Yeah,
he's kind of there's been a lot of revisionist history about him where now people think he's kind of not cool anymore.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and he's clearly problematic in a lot of ways.
For sure.
There's like a video of him on YouTube like kicking
that girl. Yeah, it's terrible. I would never hang out with him. It was more just like a yeah, what were you going to say?
No, but what I'm going to say is like, in my early 20s, I read all of his books, and I would like ride the bus through LA reading his books, and I felt less alone. I was like, oh yeah, this guy's okay. So this is like a blueprint for life as a working person as I go to my restaurant job, whatever. And no, is that the blueprint you really want to follow? No, but like,
oh yeah. It's maybe with him, it's like it gets a little twisted because the books are so clearly sort of autobiographical that your take on him gets conflated with your take on the material. Whereas like other authors, I don't know anything about them.
That's right.
Nor do I need to. Or Stephen King, I don't know anything about him.
Yeah, good point.
And also, I don't think I've ever been one to like, I'm pretty distrustful of like, I don't like the feeling of like following. Like, I don't usually read a book and then find myself like, oh, now that's my worldview.
Right.
Maybe when I was younger, if I read some nonfiction or something, I'd like be overly clung to it or something, but I don't mind reading stuff that I don't agree with. I think it's kind of interesting.
I do too. And I think there's value in what everyone has to say.
Yeah.
It doesn't always go down as easy, and you do have to question it. Like Alice Munro, she's this great short story writer, considered one of the best. She got her start pretty late in life too. And she just passed away, and a couple months later it came out, her daughter came out with all this sort of bad stuff that Alice turned the other way on with her husband toward her daughter. And her books are still sitting on my bookshelf, you know, and yeah, there's a moment where I go, okay, well, maybe they don't need to be featured as prominently there, but I did find value in her words. And if every person is a mix of good and bad, why are we going to throw away some of the good that they did?
Yeah, and that's like, of course, it's like all those things are true. It's like, it could be a great book, they could be a bad person, or they could whatever. And then maybe it's just like, how does it feel to you to have them on your shelf?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes like that, like even if I'm cool with it, if people, I don't want to go through that discussion with everyone, or I don't know.
Right. Well, it was interesting earlier. You also said like when you read, it allows you to try on different hats, and you kind of start to like, you almost like embody the character that they're leading you with. I don't know. There's something so interesting when we were talking earlier about like, what does a book mean after you read it, and what do you remember from it? And it's like, well, I got to view life through a different lens for a while.
Yeah, and maybe that's like why it's not even a great way to be like, well, I don't remember the book. It's like, yeah, but you did for that month.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't really remember the friends I hung out with 8 years ago and this month, but like it did have value to me at that time, or contributed to something. Yeah,
sort of accumulation of feelings that you've brought with you on your journey.
Yeah. You know, the book that I'm like getting ready to, I think I might be ready for it again. Did you ever read Brothers Karamazov?
Yeah.
So when I was like 20 or something like that, I was in the bookstore and I read the back, and the copy had a quote from him saying, if I can finish this work before I die, I can die happy, for I will have completely expressed myself. And I was like, what more do you need to know to read a book? Yeah. So I like bought the book.
He blurbed his own book.
Dude, and it's like you get a genius telling you, hey, I'm pretty much, if you get this one, that's pretty much what I got. Be crazy for me not to read it.
Yeah.
So I got it, and worst copy, those little tiny ones that are way too thick, you know?
Yeah, those are hard.
But I got through about 400 pages, and I was loving it. And I was just like fully into it. And then I went on a trip with a friend, did like a whole little South America trip. And I brought it, never read it.
Yeah.
But a month goes by, I come back, and I can't remember what's going on. And all the names are like 40 letters long.
Yeah.
So I couldn't do it. But I didn't have the heart to start over. So there it sits. So I've never finished it. But it's brutal to have to start over on a book.
Yeah. But how many years later?
Well, now this would be about 20 years later.
Okay.
So I could probably...
Yeah,
the pain is gone.
Yeah, you're a different person.
Yeah.
But it's your white whale.
But, you know, you were talking about Cam not being into Dune earlier. I'm like, that book threw me off too.
Dune did?
I'm like 8 pages in. I'm like, can you name one alien Jeff or something? Every alien is like 40 letters long. And it just makes it too hard. I'm like, maybe if Kindle could like, I don't know if they do this, but like color code names, like this guy's always chartreuse or green or whatever, like something where it's more visual.
Well, with the Russians too, going back to that, like there's multiple names for each person.
Yeah.
And so it takes a while before you start to click in on that.
Oh, that's the same person. You know, sometimes don't they do like a letter and then a dash? Yeah. I've seen that. I like that.
Yeah.
Because I find when I read the names, I'm always like, and then Alex, I kind of mumble through them in my head.
Yeah.
When you read the names in a book, are you like trying to pronounce them perfectly to yourself?
No.
Because then I'll hear someone else talk about the book and they'll be like, oh, you know that character so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, I did not process the actual name of that character at all.
Alexandrovich. Yeah, no, it's more about like the look.
Yeah, I'm like, Alex, I know that. I recognize that name.
Yeah, you recognize almost just the symbols put together.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine is War and Peace. I read maybe 3/4 of it.
I heard that's actually more of a page turner than you'd think.
It is. But it's like 1,000 pages depending on the copy you have. And I was like you, I was like 22, 23, and I just said, no, I'm done.
Oh, wait, how far did you get?
I got probably 700 pages into
that's
that book.
funny.
Yeah, and I just kind of...
But you know what? I do that with a lot of books. I'm not a completionist. Like, sometimes you get it.
Yeah.
Like, whatever worldview or way of seeing things or descriptive language, whatever the book is kind of... Sometimes after a while, I'm like, I got it.
I did it last night. One of my first guests, Alyssa Limperis, she's so cool. She had read Normal People, which got turned into a Hulu series, whatever. And it's very much not my style of book, but it's been sitting on my nightstand because she gave it to me. And so I finally started going into it. I got 100 pages deep, and I just said, yeah, no, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
But I get who this appeals to, maybe in some realm, or maybe I don't get it. But I gave it a shot, and I get the gist.
That's how I felt you did. I tried to read, what's the... dude, I try to remember this 5,000 different ways. He's like San something Gabriel. He does like, what do you call writing that's, I'm being real, I'm sounding dumb here, but, mystical writing or...
Oh, yes. You're not talking Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Yeah, what's his main one?
100 Years of Solitude or Love in the Time of Cholera.
That a good... No, 100 Years of Solitude.
Magical Realism.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Man, I could not do that one.
100 Years of Solitude.
Yeah, I gave it I went 30 pages in, came back to... I was going to Colombia on a plane flight, and I'm like, all right, this will be fun reading. I just couldn't do it.
Well, once again, too many family members, too many names.
I think so.
I think you get thrown off by names.
And who... I hate to be basic like this, but I'm like, who wants what? Like, is someone dying or in love with someone, or I just need... But I think that objectively, like, storytelling should be that way. Just, I straight up lose focus.
Yeah.
But I appreciate when people can... Like, people that love the Game of Thrones books, I haven't read them, but I've been told it's like 8 pages of describing someone's, like, jewelry. And I've heard friends go, oh, it's incredible, dude. And they'll explain that to me, and I'm like, oh, that's like my hell for reading.
Yeah.
But that's that's cool.
Well, yeah, no, you brought it up. You were like ADD. So it's like, yeah, you got to get locked in. They got to hook you. And to do that, it's like establish conflict early, make the stakes high, keep the characters from getting what they want. Let's go.
I think so.
And then let's get some revelations along the way.
Yeah.
And trials, tribulations, and then creative.
Let's keep it tight. Let's get in. Let's get out.
Yeah.
No, I love a short book. Shawshank, I'm like 108 pages. Let's go.
And he that tells the whole story, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's in prison, he's out of prison.
Yeah, and most of the lines that are great in the movie are from the book.
Really?
I've never read Stephen King, so I don't know how representative of him that book is, but I was really impressed with there's a lot of great lines in that movie/book.
Yeah, I know in the movie. I never read the book. Maybe that's a good entry into Stephen King for me because I've never read him either.
Yeah. Everyone says to read The Stand.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing.
But again, you pick it up, you're like, all right, is that my next 6 months?
I know. And I grew up, my mom would read every new Stephen King book that came out. And there's some part of me where I'm like, is this the one that I want to read?
I think part of it is I put too much pressure on books because what I need to do is have 5 I'm excited to read. And then if I'm not feeling something, just move on.
Yeah, move on.
Because I get stuck. Like right now, this last week, it was nice. I ended each night with 30 minutes of reading on the couch. And it was a great little ritual. Now the book's over. So I need to slide a new one in real quick while I have this little rhythm going. Yeah. Because I know I do enjoy it. It's just maybe I just don't always latch on to... It's like song. I'm the type of guy too, with songs, I'll listen to the same ones that I love over and over again as opposed to trying a bunch of new stuff.
Oh, me too.
And with books, I'm not too adventurous.
But I do call it kind of like a heat source, And it's like in basketball, if a guy's hot, he's going to keep shooting.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, that was a heat check when he finally
You mean reading if you get in a rhythm with it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you get to a rhythm with it. And it just becomes this sort of source of fun.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, retreat or confrontation, whatever. I read Brothers Karamazov. Probably didn't pronounce that one too
Karamazov is how I always said it, but I'm just guessing.
Yeah, and I have 2 brothers, and that one landed with me. But as you're talking about it, and I reflect on what my takeaway was, it did apply to my current moment because of my family. So my remembrance of that is purely within my own life.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the subject matter.
Yeah, then I bought Crime and Punishment. You know, the thing about buying books is I do feel like 90% of the work is done when I buy it.
Yeah.
I'm like, hell yeah, I bought this book. And then I get home and I'm like, oh wait, now I got to read this whole thing. Yeah. So I have a lot of books that I wanted to read one day.
They're two totally different acts.
Yeah.
The buying is its own ritual, which is, a ritual, truly. A lot of thought or impulse or whatever goes into that. And then, reading it, it's a whole new chemistry almost.
Yeah. What did you read like in elementary school?
I read a lot of sports books and children detective books. So my mom got me this series called The Bobbsey Twins, and I think it was like 3 sets of twins in one family, and I think they might have solved crimes. I read the Hardy Boys books. Those were 2 brothers who solved crimes, and their dad, I think, might have been a big detective. And I read a lot of these Matt Christopher sports books. It's like with titles like The Kid Who Only Hit Home Runs. Oh. And he did. He only hit home runs, but he didn't start that way. And I don't think in his last at-bat he hit a home run either, and that was okay. But I think serialized things, I remember just my parents buying me those. I mean, if we're going even further back, we're talking The Giving Tree, Dr. Seuss.
Yeah. That's interesting with the Hardy Boys. Those, I never liked, I know the books you're talking about in both cases.
There's Nancy Drew, which was kind of like the female.
Yeah, the Boxcar Children.
Yeah.
I think I wonder now as you're saying it, because I was like Roald Dahl.
Yeah, Roald Dahl. I read him
The Phantom Tollbooth, and in both cases the illustrations are a big part of it, and there's a whimsy to it and a world buildingness to it that I think really fascinated me,
and a weirdness.
And books like the Boxcar Children and those, like when I would see the covers, I'm like, that's just like real. And in fact, a lot of them had like photo covers.
Yeah, they did.
And I'm kind of like, I don't know, not consciously, but thinking back now, I'm like, I think I just thought those felt cold to me.
Yeah.
Whereas I liked, one of my favorite books was the guy who did the illustrations for the Phantom Tollbooth wrote a book called, I think it was called A Veil of Laughter, A Barrel of Tears. It's like a kid's book, or like a young adult, you know. But in the first chapter, the narrator gets mad at a character and then leaves the book.
Oh.
Or a character leaves the book. And I remember being like, what? The character left the book? How do you do that? And then in like the 5th chapter, the character just shows back up and the narrator's like, I thought you didn't want to be in the book. And he's like, well, I do now.
Dang.
And I remember being like, dude, this book is crazy.
Postmodern.
Yeah, it was just really loose and fun and kind of like, oh, I didn't know you could do that.
You're reminding me now of a very brief phase because of, I think, just the school library where I was going to school. They had those choose your own adventure books. Did you ever read those?
Oh yeah, I love those.
Love those,
except the ones that we had in our class were like, all right, you just boarded an alien ship with 6 they were really dry.
Oh, they were.
Yeah.
Oh, mine
but
were
I liked
more
them in
like
theory.
Medieval.
Oh, that's
and it
interesting.
Was like, so you have, and you printed out a paper and you would keep track of what you had in your gear.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, if you want to fight the dragon, turn to page 73. If you want to run from the dragon, 16. So then you turn to 73 and it's like, well, if you have your sword, you defeat the dragon, but if you don't, you lose and turn to page 52, Oh,
that's cool.
Yeah, so it was really kind of interactive and like it made the book an adventure.
Yeah.
Which, like I remember that feeling like a sugar rush. As far as a reader goes.
Especially when if you finally beat one of those books.
Yeah. Well, and you cheat too.
Yeah.
Go, oh yeah.
I would skim and find the page that tells you won and then figure out how to work backwards. Oh, that's really funny.
So that was where your reading was as a kid. Did you read a lot as a kid?
Yeah, I really did. I collected Roald Dahl books like every birthday or Christmas because he has a lot of random ones.
Yeah.
Like The Giraffe, The Pelly and Me, and
never heard
ones. Yeah, like a bunch of random ones that. So every and my grandparents had this bookstore in Sacramento by them that had a lot of because my little bookstore at home would only have like the 8 basic ones of his. So it was like a fun collection thing.
Yeah.
And I went through a whole phase of I really liked drawing, like that kind of loose character drawing, and just the idea that a little doodle of a face can come to life. always has endlessly fascinated me.
Yeah, there was something kind of creepy about the Roald Dahl drawings too.
Yeah.
There'd be like a big, like there'd be these oversized features on characters. And yeah, I remember reading the wonderful story of Henry Sugar, and it was like 7 or 8 different stories. I think Wes Anderson just...
Yeah, and that one, the copy of the book I had as a kid was like not the Quentin Blake illustrations. And it was just I don't know. I remember not liking the cover, and I found it drier. And I don't know if that was like a slightly not like older than kids level reading, or if I just didn't like it. Yeah,
because my cover was cool. Yeah, if I remember correctly.
So, and if you break up the paragraphs with fun little doodles, now I'm, kind of more in.
Yeah, it's holding your hand a little through it.
But it's weird. I was in the bookstore last night and saw their copy of Matilda, and it's so not the one I had.
Right.
Even though it was the same illustration, I was just like, that's not the same book.
Yeah.
With that era of reading, I'm like so attached to the covers.
The covers. What do you remember what your Matilda cover was?
Yeah, it was yellow.
Yeah, the yellow
yeah,
one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were there like a lot of different heads on it or something? Or
it was just her reading books, I think, and her legs dangling.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. That book blew me away when I was a kid.
Same. I remember I bought it for the library at my school.
No,
in
you
second grade.
It?
Yeah, because I just liked it.
You read it, and that's cool.
Yeah.
That reminds me of how I think I was in 9th grade when we had to do our silent reading for 15 minutes at the beginning of class, and I didn't have a book, so I went to the shelf. And that's how I read Harry Potter. I hadn't heard anything about it. I just stumbled into it, and it was a lot of fun going into it blind like that.
Yeah. Oh, you hadn't heard all the...
No.
Oh, funny.
I mean, I'd maybe heard a little rumbling or something, but yeah.
I still never read it. We missed it our age, like growing up, I feel like. Or I did at least, by year...
We were just a little old for it.
Yeah, and so I've never really given it a shot, but...
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A real treat, too, at that time was... I used to have this friend that I'd go stay the night at his house, but he would sleep into like 11, and I was always getting up. He had no blinds, so I'd wake up with the sun. I'd have like 5 hours to just do nothing. But he had every Calvin and Hobbes book and every like Gary Larson book.
Whoa.
And so I would just start mowing through those in the morning. By the time he woke up, I'd read like 2 or 3 of them.
That's fun.
But Calvin and Hobbes is like, now you can buy like a complete series, hardbound, like really pretty collection set of those. And I gifted it to a kid, and it was like, what a cool gift. Like when you think about what you're giving someone, when you're like, here's every Calvin and Hobbes cartoon back to back, that's an impressive work.
Yeah, that could keep that kid entertained for years.
Yeah.
Just flip open to it and never see the same one twice.
And they're so good.
Yeah.
I guess like Far Side too.
Well, that was something. We would get the newspaper, the LA Times, and I would read comics for...
Yeah.
Like...
Me too. But Calvin and Hobbes is hard because they have the stories, and like throughout a week...
Yeah.
I don't know. There's somewhere we can read them all in a row. It's just so satisfying. It's like when you don't watch a show till the 5th season comes out, and then you can binge the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's very freeing.
It is freeing. You're doing it on your terms.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes me think I was obsessed with the baseball statistics, but they wouldn't print them every day. So I'd get my dad's sports section, and the stats weren't in there, and it felt so dry.
What is about stats? Yeah, what's funny about stats, I loved reading box scores.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like see who scored what. I didn't even watch the games. And I loved seeing the movie reviews every Friday.
Oh, yeah.
Like I knew every movie and what they got reviewed, even though I was like 10 and would never be able to see these movies.
Well, by the time I was in high school and driving, sometimes I would drive my brother to school, drop him off, and then just go park at the bagel shop and buy an LA Times and a bagel, and I would just ditch school and read the newspaper.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, I've always loved reading. I would ditch to go to the Barnes & Noble and just read on my own terms.
Newspapers, I used to substitute teach when I was like 22, and I read the paper every day for like a while. And when you read it every day, it's like, now I'm starting to get it. Like the narrative, and I'm like, oh, I know, because we had a tank over there, and that's why they're... Now I get the headline today because of the last one.
Yeah.
The way I read the news now, I just check in. I'm like, wait, what?
Why is there? From where?
Yeah. Why are they over there?
I mean, it does kind of tune you into like the narrative.
Yeah, that's it. I got the narrative. Now I kind of have like a idea of stuff going on, but I don't have like a tight little narrative.
It's kind of creepy though.
Which is?
Like, will they veer from their narrative, or are they invested in the story that they've been telling?
Yeah, well, back then I didn't even know that there would be a different narrative, so you just feel smart by reading it.
That's right.
Now you're like, wait, what are you? Yeah.
I was never not suspicious of media at all. Whatever. Yeah, I've been reading this book, The Image, from 1961, and it's about like events and what this author calls pseudo events. And I brought it up a couple episodes ago too. I'm not done with it still. But yeah, just this idea of like the graphic revolution made it so that you could print media faster and faster. And so they had to invent more and more news. And yeah, it really has been sticking with me, but it's a slower read.
Yeah.
And that's what you were talking about earlier, how you read mostly nonfiction these days. And I've become the same way.
Yeah.
But it's a little, it chips away at my confidence as a reader because it's slow going.
That's interesting.
And I'm like, we're more than halfway through the year. I've read 22 books.
Yeah.
And I host a book podcast, and it's a little embarrassing. But it's like, but you're...
22 is low or high?
I think it's low for a guy who's like, hey, check out what I'm reading all the time, And I'm like, I'm the book guy. And
although I feel like you're the everyman book guy.
Thank
you.
You're
not coming off like you just love books. It doesn't mean you read fast or
that's
read
right.
a lot.
Yeah. Yeah,
doesn't even mean you get it.
I sure
doesn't even mean you know how to read.
I'm hanging on by a thread. Yeah. It's funny. I'm not really taking it.
Although I just tried. I'm so pissed. I got this. What's that app for? It truncates books for you. It's like Blipsy or Blinksy.
Oh wow.
Is that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
There's some app it's like, here's a book, but here's a condensed version of it. I did the free trial, forgot to cancel it. Now I have a year subscription for like $100 to this stupid app. But
is it useful?
Well, that's what I found a book that there's Blinkist. Not that I want to shout them out. I actually want to
sponsor us. Blinkist.
Yeah. Well, and maybe I'm wrong, but I read there's a book called is it Big Thoughts, Small Thoughts, or Quick Thoughts, fast thoughts, slow thoughts. Okay. Anyway, it's a book you see a lot of people recommend about the way our brains make decisions. I read the little Blinkist version, and I'm like, this sounds like the most basic. Like sometimes when you reduce nonfiction, it sounds so obvious or simple that it's not going to stick or doesn't seem nuanced.
Yeah.
So for that, for instance, I'm like, this does not this is like not a good way to, I'm not getting anything from this.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So with nonfiction, I'm always like, do I need to read the whole thing? But oftentimes you kind of do. Or
you're reading the whole entirety of one chapter you find fascinating about one thing you find fascinating.
But then like the way you told me about the one you're reading, I could be like, I could see myself telling someone else, oh, well, once they started generating more media, they had to create more news.
Yeah.
And it's like, did I just get what you got from the book?
That's my whole theory of this show. Is like, you can't look. I've read 22 books this year so far. But I've sat across from people who've told me about books that like those now live in me in their way. You've made a movie. You know how it is. Like, I don't know for you, but like sitting across from a friend and telling him or her, whoever, your idea, that feels as real, if not more real, than when you go out and you actually go make the movie.
Oh, totally. I think we've talked about sometimes being like, what is even the point of making it? Because sometimes I'm like, in my head, it's there.
Yeah.
In fact, it's kind of more fun because I can imagine whatever I want than to go through all that work to make something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't it almost just as active in your imagination?
Well, I guess the idea is to share it.
I think it is to share. And I think it's also like the movie you think you have in your head is only like 15% done because you haven't encountered any of the issues yet to make your creative solves that you like or with comedy, the performances you like or the characters.
Yeah.
But it does feel close.
Yeah, it does feel close.
Yeah.
And less satisfying.
Nonfiction's frustrating too, though, because if you don't know all of the fact, it's kind of useless. I've quoted books where I'm like, even me trying to remember the name of that author, it's like, oh yeah, I read. So in Sapiens, they talked about how, or was it the exact opposite of what I just said? That happens a lot. Like I remember the sentence, but I can't remember if it was that or definitely not that. And then it's like, well, then I might as well not know any of it.
I had my friend Chris on the podcast, and he was kind of holding my feet to the flame about, I told him that native trails in the United States are the basis for our roads and highways. And he goes, well, not the 83. And I just read the Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States, and I'm like, okay, I can't confidently say the 83. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, all right, well, I'm not this dense. I'm not going to start citing things I don't know.
Does he know a lot about the 83?
No, but he didn't need to from his side.
I see.
Throw one out at me, and all
Right.
right. But no, that is the tough part.
That's the other thing too, is I've read enough. Like I was really into economics for a while, so I would read a bunch of different books, and now I'll hear people say something, and I'll think, oh, I knew there was something against what they're saying. I know there's an argument against that. Damn it, I can't remember. I also can't remember which I think is.
You're like, I know 49% of the persuasive information to get my point across with this, and I don't think that's going to be enough.
No, and it's almost like I've just been in the middle of a cocktail party where I overheard a lot of smart people say stuff. But then if I need to, but maybe I could be like, oh, I think that person over there maybe has something they were going to tell you.
Or you just confidently make something up.
Yeah, or that.
A number, 83% of the people don't feel that way.
That's why I kind of wish, like, if a book came with like a test at the end to be like, just make sure I understood this.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be good. And what happens if you fail the test? It shocks you?
Then you never read again. Because you tell yourself, what's the point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not retaining this.
With fiction, that was actually, I remember in high school, math was my best subject by far. All the reading comprehension stuff, maybe my vocab was just bad, but also, I don't know, I'd be like, why was the character angry in this? And I would always be wrong. I don't know, like those questions were really hard for me. Yeah. I don't know why, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder why.
I don't know if I was putting my own thing onto the scene I was reading, or probably vocab, a lot of it too.
Just not knowing words.
I did, yeah. Like one point, like in my 20s, I just got the GRE vocab words just to study just for fun. I was like, what if I do 10 a day? And I got pretty far, and I got to where I could quote the exact definition of a lot of words. And then you go, oh, this is what the New Yorker is. Like the New Yorker is GRE range of words.
That makes sense.
And I kept noticing stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, me reading in high school, if you don't know what these words mean, you can't really get the...
But then you come to find out as a writer and, going through your craft and process, like, oh yeah, you still got to find the most creative way to say something simply.
Yeah.
People respond to simple language. And you were talking about short sentences. That's like the biggest struggle for me. There's so much I want to pack into a sentence, but it takes some courage and some grasp of even the parts of language, the vocabulary you do have, to just state it.
Yes.
State it plainly.
Well, and sometimes it's like, if you can't, you don't even know what you want to say yet. And I've noticed emotionally, when I read old emails or texts, the longer, the more I'm aimless. Or I've seen old, emails to some girl I was seeing, and it's like this long thing about all my feelings. And I'm like, what that email should have been is, I don't think we're a great fit, but I love you, but I just don't think we should be together. Like that's what that whole email was, but I just couldn't say it to myself enough to write it.
Yeah.
Like, why am I writing all this stuff?
Well, it almost like goes against the thing you brought up earlier of like when men say things, we're saying our truth. And maybe we are, but it can be a convoluted version of our truth because we don't have the right words.
True. And it's assuming you even know what your truth is, or...
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was... What was it?
When you said that, it made me think of this book I read called Iron John, which was like part of the men's like not the men's renaissance, but like some kind of 80s or 90s thing of like, hey, we got to remember we're men still. We're iron and a woman is wood. And it was like very reductive. But I think the intention behind it was nice and sincere.
Well, yeah, and sometimes like I actually found it, I can't remember what was phrased, I'm probably butchering it, but what I took from it was like, how like the classic, a guy will tell a girl, like, I don't want anything serious, but I'm down to, and then months go by and, feelings are developing and you're like, well, I told you I didn't want anything. It's like, yeah, but your actions for 3 months, like when you met my family, like you could see where I'm a little confused. And the guy's like, yeah, but one time in the car, that one night I said the one sentence that goes against everything else I've been doing for 3 months. Isn't that clear to you? And I've heard guys gripe about that so much that when I read that book, I was like, oh God, it really flipped my brain on how to see those things.
Yeah, we should write the book, The Way of the Inferior Man.
Yeah, yeah.
Just be like, here's where we go wrong.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
Yeah, or just like where do you even... Yeah.
Or where we get lost in translation.
Or am I even the guys they're talking about? When I read these books, I'm like, I don't even know if I'm like these guys. I think they're talking about lumberjacks and pilots or something. I don't think I'm one of these guys.
Yeah, I don't totally have a code.
No.
Do you have a code?
What do you mean, like a code of ethics?
Yeah, a code that you live by, that you behave by, that you kind of fall back on in a moment of choice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I do.
Like someone on the street asks you for $1, you have your code there, or does it?
No, that's a run and gun.
Yeah.
Like $1 on the street. Just today, this guy was on the way into the market, was like, hey, do you have $1? And I did my classic, oh, I don't have it. Just went in. But then I was like, that guy was really sincere. And here I am buying some stupid snack. So I did try to do cash back, but they couldn't. So on the way out, I did go, hey, I tried to do cash back, but they wouldn't let me. And he was like, all right. But then other times I'm in and out. The $1, that's a tough one.
Yeah, it's just.
With other stuff, whenever I've been in other situations that I feel are emotionally confusing in different ways, I just try to be like, if I'm being honest and loving, that's really all I can do. And I just have to assume that is a North Star here to some degree.
That's nice. See, that's a code.
Yeah. Like that one, like, because I was doing a long distance relationship and she had kids, and you're worried all the time, like, is this beneficial? Is it not? And I'm like, hey, I'm showing up. I'm loving everyone. I'm trying to bring good to everyone's life. And if that, I'm just going to trust that that's okay or something.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, down the road, their therapist will figure out whether that's true or not. But these are the things you tell yourself to help yourself go to sleep.
Yeah, that's it. And like the things you can control.
And that's where I think reading like politics and stuff, that's where it gets confusing to me, because you can have all these great intentions on different sides, and it doesn't mean the world's going to let things line up the way they want. Yeah, I get kind of overwhelmed. Maybe I get overwhelmed by reading too when there's too many possibilities. Maybe I like the simplicity, not just for ADD reasons, but for like, I don't know, it's like emotional.
I'm with you. One of the books I've been flipping through is called Paved Paradise, and it's about how parking rules the world. That's the subtitle. And it's all about parking and how it like gets in our way of building a more humane world, parking our cars, right? And it's hard for me to even get through it because it gets me antsy.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, let's just like fix this now. Like, oh yeah, this all makes too much sense.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't read fast enough to make my anxiety slow down on it.
Well, it's like no one does the world any good when their like soul is being crushed. So it is like a thing you have to figure out the balance within yourself. Like, because that stuff overwhelms me too. When you let yourself any really truly tragically situation or circumstance, it's like it is just feels hopeless.
Yeah, hopeless. Yeah. And
so you want to like acknowledge, I don't know, you have to figure out a way to be with it to where you don't let it overtake you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because
especially if it's parking.
Yeah, parking. We're talking the most serious.
Yeah. That does sound interesting though.
Yeah, really interesting. There's like,
what's like one example of what he says?
He says that like he quotes this scientist who's a parking scientist, I believe at UCLA. I think his name's Donald Shoup. He says looking for a parking spot activates like the lower, like lizard parts of your brain. He also quotes something, a study that said a majority of boomers think it's more important for their neighborhood to have parking than affordable housing.
Oh.
Yeah, so like just kind of how obsessed we've become with it. Yeah,
that's interesting. Do they talk about I'm always curious about that when you park in front of, like you're going to visit a friend but there's no spot in front of their house, when you park right in front of someone else's house, that always feels kind of wrong.
Yeah, they talk about how parking often leads to murders and violence because people in suburban neighborhoods do think that spot
is theirs, kind of. Yeah.
And they probably do park there 90% of the time. So when someone else does, it throws their world out of whack. And yet, it's like, it's just a car.
Dude, and also, when I was in San Francisco, there was no parking, and it is such a huge part of your life. And I remember one time I got off work, I worked at a hospital at like 4 a.m, and I was driving around for an hour, exhausted, and I just parked, I double parked, and I started like kind of crying. I was so tired. And I was like, there is literally, and I had to almost get in a car wreck on purpose to even have a place to be. Like, or I have to run out of gas or go to a parking, like if you can't, there's no option.
It's an existential despair.
Yeah, and then it's almost like the city's telling you like, hey, don't be here. Right. There's no room here for you.
Right. So well, and I've been riding public transit for like 8 months now.
Yeah.
And my whole thing is like, oh yeah, the reason I wanted to find a parking spot so bad is because I was uncomfortable in the car. Like my life begins when I leave the car, not when I'm in it as much. Don't get me wrong. There's some really beautiful things that happen when you're driving up the coast or you're on a date with a romantic partner, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I know that feeling. You went to my place up in Echo Park that was up that steep hill.
Yeah.
It's called the Forgotten Edge, and there's a little park at the top called Teardrop Park.
Yeah.
So oftentimes I would have to park across Sunset Boulevard at 1 and 2 in the morning.
That hill is brutal.
Walk up that hill, and I called it my final indignity.
Yeah.
I'd be like, here's that final indignity.
That hill's so big that some friends of mine over there were like, the park stays really safe late at night because it's not an easy park to get to.
Right. Not for walkers.
No. And you're not pushing like a shopping cart up that hill.
Yeah.
Like there's not people even trying to sleep there or live there.
Teenagers go up there and do
a lot of teenagers are doing whippets up there.
Yeah. Do their drugs. And I got my catalytic converter stolen there. So, but that parking thing is
that reminds me of a book I bought and I really enjoyed. I don't remember why. It was a little dry, but it's about how cities are constructed and the layout, like for instance, like in a downtown, like just how foot traffic creates safety.
Yeah.
And just little like ways.
Are you talking the Jane Jacobs book?
Yes, Death
and Life of the Great American Cities?
Did you read that?
I've read, once again, probably like 60, 70 pages, and it's a similar feeling.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, well, we went wrong.
Yeah.
We went wrong, and we need to fix this.
Well, that's where, to me, like that kind of thing, sometimes I feel a forgiveness for like the way we build our cities in particular, when stuff's going crazy or people are lonely, or I'm like, yeah, this is all the whole framework. It actually makes me take pressure off humans being, maladaptive or something. And it's like,
they were solving one problem, not knowing that it would lead to all these other things.
Yeah, or if you want to, like, why are people, I don't know, off the top of my head, like an opiate crisis. Well, maybe it's because people are really lonely, or maybe it's our economy. But also, if the city you live in is structured to where you feel naturally isolated, you don't know how to, it's like that alone might do it.
Oh, yeah.
So I almost think that book, that's why I wanted to read it, because I'm really fascinated by it.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I was looking at it from the macro when I gave my example. Yeah, you mean like on a micro personal level? You're like, maybe I'm out of shape because there isn't a fresh grocery store within.
Yeah, or say you live in San Francisco and you're wondering why people act a certain way in the city. It might be as simple as there's no parking. Everyone is stressed. They're wondering where. I went on a date once and I remember being like 20 minutes in, I was like, do you think we're both still thinking about our parking spot? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I think neither of us are present. And I'm like, that was a whole thing. Like, it was hard to get. I had to fight someone off. And she's like, yeah. So it's like your head is just always wrapped up in stuff it shouldn't be.
Yeah, and stuff it shouldn't be.
It's like a friend of mine said once, true or not, I like the idea that, like cities aren't for poets, I think is what he said, because your brain can't daydream. You're constantly like, as soon as you almost have an interesting thought, it's, oh, watch out for that. It's counterintuitive because cities are so inspiring. You see so many things, but you're constantly having to engage with stuff that is in a simpler way of living. Like now, even my street where I live now, there's just easy parking. And laundry, if you got laundry in your house, SF, that's your whole day.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. No, I mean, parsing through the stimulation is tough as a creative person. And then you almost just have to get to that speed and be like, okay, this is the speed I find inspiration from. And sometimes
when I go to the DMV or the courthouse, like for parking tickets, I remember being like, they should almost legally mandate everyone carry a book. Because when I'm in a good book and then I have to wait in a line, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I'm reading my book.
Yeah. Like
right now with Shawshank, if I had to go to the DMV, it's like, whatever, I'll just read.
Yeah.
When I don't have a book, then I'm on my phone or whatever, and I'm like, the whole world would just chill out if everyone just like always carried a book they were interested in with them.
I mean, that's it right there. Reading turns the world pleasurable.
Yeah, and it makes you patient because you're like, if I have a place, I'm also going to engage with reality right here.
What a powerful thing a book becomes when you look at it that way. I almost feel like that's a great place for us to end, because I feel like you and I could probably do this for another 3 hours.
I agree.
But with the listeners?
DMV Public Library. Merge them.
Yeah. All right. Well, Cory, what a true pleasure talking to you. Did you have anything?
No, this is good. I was going to say it's a fun podcast because, from this point of view, because it's fun to think about. It was fun to think this week, like, what do I read, or why do I read, or whatnot, or it's a fun topic to want to engage in.
Yeah, thanks. And as well as I know you, I think we, went down some routes that we probably wouldn't in a regular conversation.
Oh, totally.
Hanging out.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun for me. And I just really appreciate everything you brought. And
then hopefully if enough people like this on YouTube and recommend it, then pretty soon you can get some authors or people not like me to come in here and
I'm talking names here. No, if there's a name in my life, it's you. And I recommend everyone check out everything you do at Mollybro on Instagram and YouTube. Mm-hmm. Dress Up Gang.
Yeah.
Cory Loykasek. Loykasek.
Dude, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm your biggest fan. So this truly is like having a celebrity. In fact, I was a fan of you before I was a friend. So in a way,
that is just how we met, actually.
Yeah. In a way, I did sort of do what I'm setting out to do with my podcast.
Yeah. You did.
All right. Well, thanks again.
All right, brother.
Thank you so much for tuning into another episode, and hope to see you next time. Feel free to rate us and do all that good stuff like we were talking about, and happy reading out there. Thank you for listening to another episode of Turek Books. Be sure to like, subscribe, thumbs up, any kind of thing that could help us get listened to or watched by more people. We really appreciated having you, and hope to see you again next week with a new guest and plenty of books. Take care until then.